I mean, I used to eat mac and cheese with ketchup in my hands.
This was like last week.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Alien Familiar RPG podcast. I am Clayton.
I'm Kyle Perkins.
I'm Nina.
I'm Hayley.
I'm Lanina.
I'm Jordan.
KD.
And before we get started, I want to remind all of our listeners that you can find show notes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. And we are on Facebook at facebook.com/alienfamiliar. And our topic that we are going to be talking about today is we're going to be giving a post-game wrap-up and breakdown of our long-running campaign in the Savage Worlds rules system of the game world that we all created called Ebena. We already talked a little bit about this campaign on a previous podcast, but at that point, this campaign was still relatively new. We had only played, I want to say like 5 or 6 sessions of the actual game itself. Now we're going to be talking just kind of looking back on the game, what we've learned, how it might affect our gameplay from here on out. And I want to start off with some stats about our game campaign. This game itself ran for 30 sessions, not counting the 2 sessions that we created the world. World creation began on November 6th of 2016, and actual gameplay of the setting started on December 1st and ended on September 21st. We had a couple of short breaks due to holidays and vacations. I estimate that we spent approximately 90 hours actually in game.
Wow. Sounds like a full-length JRPG game.
Yep. In game time, the campaign took place over the course of 410 days.
Oh my god.
From the time where you guys first arrived in the first city of Southbrook until the day you defeated the Lich Acererak outside of Bogview. 188 of those days were spent you guys either walking or sailing from one point to another on the map.
Oh, God.
Fucking Lord of the Rings.
You fought in 6 mass combats, mass land combats, and 2 naval engagements. 3 dragons were killed in single combat. The first one was killed solely by Ivy. The second one was killed solely by Talon. And then the mother of all of those other dragons
was Khaleesi. No, not the Khaleesi.
Was killed by Magnus, played by KD.
Hold your applause.
I wanted to go back and calculate just how many individuals your characters killed themselves.
Jesus.
But I didn't have... It would have been more estimates than actual counting. But I would say that this is probably one of the lowest body count games I've ever run, where the number of people that the player characters kill in the game sessions. I'm leaving out mass battles because during those it's chaos. You can't really tell who's killing who. But really, we did not spend much time in combat over the course of the campaign. Literally, the last 10 sessions, we did not have a fight until the very last session. So, like I said, the campaign ran for 30 sessions, and the completely honest reason why the campaign ended when it did is because I started losing enthusiasm for running this game week after week. This game was the longest game that I have ever personally run. It's also the longest game I've ever personally been in at 30 sessions.
Me as well.
I had enough material planned that we probably could have easily gone 40 sessions, but I just didn't have the steam for it. And I just want to say to everyone sitting around this table, and unfortunately Beth is not able to join us tonight, that everyone here, your Gamer Geek cred has advanced. As per Savage Worlds rules, you are no longer novice, you are now seasoned.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Leveling up in real life is a lot harder.
Did we ever make it to legendary status in game for our characters?
Yes, that's one thing I wanted to bring up. I stopped counting experience after session 23.
Oh.
No.
Just because one of my personal problems that I have with high level characters is you get to a point where you're no longer building your character toward what you envisioned it. It's just, well, I've got this ability to level up. I've got this ability to advance. What do I have that I can take now? And it's not really about character growth anymore. So when I noticed that pretty much everybody was at that point, I stopped keeping track of experience. We had 2 other advancements after that point, but that was only because other people brought it up. Hey, we haven't gotten an advance in a while. So I gave you an advance at that point.
So you're telling me I could have got a D4 in swimming, but you kept that from me?
Exactly.
My character couldn't swim.
You're a bird!
Swimming's a skill?
Y'all ever seen, like a fucking pelican? They can swim.
Penguins. You could have gone with penguins.
Those aren't penguins.
Oh, right, I forgot.
Those are tuxedoed swimmer boys.
You float. That's what birds do.
The one time I had to swim, it was pretty fun to just challenge myself to dive down as deep as I could go. About 15 feet.
We swam together once.
No, I walked up on you swimming in a lake and then avoided it.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, I remember you going into the water.
Because I dove under and found Beth's shield.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I must have been just kind of floating on the
You
surface,
were.
just kind of like...
That was okay.
That's what it sounded like.
So for this campaign, I tried out a couple of things that I've never tried out before.
Ecstasy.
I was not high. I was not drunk for any of the sessions. I do not game master that way.
Straight edge.
While I am game master, definitely. But there were a few rules changes that I made to Savage Worlds that either I created or I adopted from other settings. One which I feel like was an absolute hit, and the others we'll discuss. The one that I felt like was an absolute hit was at the adventure cards. Using those in the game.
Yeah.
Are they not normally?
No, those are a supplement to Savage Worlds.
Oh, well, I really enjoyed that the most out of the system. That's kind of sad now that I know it's not a part of it.
Almost got me to lay a Vampire King.
Well, it is. They're Savage Worlds branded.
Yeah.
It's just they're not part of the core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really, really enjoyed them.
I thought that was a really good touch, Clayton, because, you know, you already did a good job of making us kind of feel like the heroes, but then there was this, like, extra little boost in there. They could also, like, spice up the scenario, spice things up for us. You know, I had that card there at the very end that I used to buff the boss to make the fight harder.
The final boss. The final boss of the whole game. You decide to make twice as big.
I wanted a challenge. I wanted us all to have a good final fight. I think we succeeded in doing so. No one died.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Not that time.
but good touch. Fair point. Yeah, we don't know if he's going.
He's
He's
He is
dead.
effectively dead. He is with the
His
the
phylactery in
goddess
the
of
void.
undeath,
That's right.
or goddess of death and undeath.
within the putrid bosom of the undead mother.
Anyway, I thought that was a good touch, so I like that as well.
So I cannot express how much those adventure cards fucked up the story that I had.
Good.
At every single turn, those cards completely changed the session that I had planned. I don't think there was a single session where they didn't do that at least once.
Oh my.
The biggest change in the campaign was in the second session from playing one of those goddamn cards.
What?
The Order of the Sentinel, who you guys was an NPC group of adventurers and ran a similarly sized adventuring band or war band. They were not going to be your staunch allies. They were going to be not your enemies, but your just professional rivals. They were going to kind of show up, and I was going to leave it up to you whether or not they became enemies, but my intention with them was for them to be just professional rivals that you would kind of come up against, and they would give you respect because you're in the same boat, but there were going to be times where they were going to be working for the opposition because you were both playing mercenary bands.
Gary Oak. They were going to be Gary Oak to our ass.
Smell you later.
But somebody played the card of, I don't remember what exactly what it's
Bring in
called.
the cavalry.
Yes. Bring in the cavalry. And the first boss fight of the campaign at the end of the second session. And you guys just fell in love with the characters from that moment. And I couldn't have them standing opposed to
I'm
you.
sorry, you
after
made
that point.
Judd such a good character.
Very
Like,
lovable.
oh, I love Judd.
I loved him from the first time I heard that Junt was coming.
So these characters, these rivals, these intended rivals, were not, well, one of them was a character I created. The other characters were from a previous Savage Worlds campaign that I had run. The previous longest campaign that I had ever been in, where I had been a player, we had run for about 25 sessions, but all of those player characters, all the other ones besides the character of Gath, were played by other people in this group. So I already had their personalities. I was just it was my interpretation of those characters played by other people. And I would like to throw out a shout out to Rob, if he is listening, who game mastered that campaign that Gath and Junt and Regos and Hail Skywind and Ren Skywind and every other character that was in that rival or that other gaming group. I just want to throw out props for an awesome game there.
Aww.
But yeah, the adventure cards was something that I bought just for this campaign. I'd heard some things about them online and decided to give them a shot. I don't know if I'll ever play them again though, because they are just so overpowering for the story.
Go ahead.
They changed the entire arc of the whole campaign in the second session.
There was a moment when we were supposed to get jumped by an overwhelming force in an alley. There was the PCs, not the whole army. And there was a group of people that were just supposed to rough us up. And I think it was me. I had the, summon a mob of townsfolk to come to your aid card. And you were just like, well, there was going to be a fight here, but now they're outnumbered 3-1, so I guess there's not going to be a fight here. Like, I can't count the number of times that happened.
I'm pretty
So
sure,
good.
I don't remember for sure, but I think that encounter was sparked by an adventure card that was, like, you
Yes.
get jumped by a superior force, to which then Kyle played, well, not really, they're outnumbered, not us.
Well, actually, that encounter was sparked by another thing that I brought into this campaign, and that was the after adventure cards, card draws, which I lifted from the Beasts and Barbarians campaign setting for Savage Worlds. They have a mechanic, a game system mimics Conan the Barbarian. And at the end of an adventure, each person draws a card, and then I consult a chart to see just what wacky thing happens to you in between adventurers. And that's where that encounter in the dark alleyway where you get jumped happened. It just so happened that as we were playing out that scenario, another card got played that completely made it moot.
You've activated my trap card, Yugi boy.
I really wish that we had more time to explore those in between adventure sessions. I know that I enjoyed it so much that when I first started gaming, I was inspired by that, and I did that with regular playing cards with some of my players in my other games. But I felt like we learned more about our characters that way, and I really only remember doing that twice out of the entire game. Once after the Tomb of Horrors, and then once again after the Vikinger battle.
You did it 3 times. After the first battle at Southbrook, adventure cards were drawn. After the, and then you're correct about after the Tomb of Horrors and after the Vikinger.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And, I don't know. I felt like slice of life anime episode one shot, and I really enjoyed getting to know those characters, and I wish we had more, time to, really explore the consequences of those cards. Cause we had some really cool stuff pulled.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we had several ones of you spent some time discovering yourself and you unlock a new skill, or you get married or something. It was like, what? Okay, that happened.
That never happened.
I know, but there was a card that was you have the option to do things.
No, somebody did draw the you get married card.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was you two, the Ninas.
No.
And you never got married.
No,
you
well,
cheated us.
It was
A big
It was
event happens.
It was a big romantic event happens, is what this card specifically said.
Which is not necessarily a wedding.
And you know what? We got married at the end of the game, so it's fine.
No, but yeah, I think I would have had a lot. I mean, I just personally enjoy characters and character development, but I really love that aspect of the game, and I wish we had more of it.
Let's take a minute to point out our reaction to big romantic event, Hayley. Mine is, oh. Yours is, ow. God.
I like romance.
Pulled that card. What would he have done?
Oh yeah!
Oh, no.
No, remember you got together with
Married
what's-her-face.
fucking Mirror earlier. Like, big surprise.
See, like,
Wait, what do you mean earlier?
Didn't I marry Mirror at the end? No.
No.
I thought I did.
I'm sorry,
I really
there's
thought I
not-
said that. I thought it in like a passing, just like, you guys are all like screaming about something, and I'm just like, by the way, Mirror, I'm not gonna get married. Just like, kind of, no one
Very
comment.
quickly.
Yeah, we eloped.
No.
Oh,
We tamed that wind.
is she a princess?
No!
But you're a
She's a
king.
pauper from 1,000 years in the past, trapped in a fucking madman's dungeon.
Yeah, we get it. She's lapis lazuli, but like, does that make her a princess because you're a king?
What?
Hey, don't hit the table.
No.
Sorry.
we're not gonna go there.
Okay.
That's a
Reel it-
gem. It's a gemstone.
Yes,
Certainly is.
reel it back in.
Well,
Let's go on.
I'm Tanzanite. Then I can do it too. Look at me.
Clayton, I think the adventure cards would not have been so huge if we had only got one play of each card. If you'd like pulled them out of the deck once they were played, I saw several of them multiple times. So maybe if you want to try them again, I know you did start pulling some later.
I did pull, like, after they were played, they got pulled out of the deck, and then I would shuffle the deck with the remaining cards. That's why cards kept getting recycled.
Hmm.
We went through that until all of the cards were,
Yeah.
well, there were fewer cards in the deck than there were players around the table. At that point, I shuffled all the cards back in.
I don't know what the designer's intent was with those exactly, so I can't say that they weren't well play tested, but I can say that they were not well balanced.
Yeah.
There were a lot of really titanically huge cards, and then there were ones like, you find a random mundane item that you needed. Great, I'm not going to play that. There were several that were just duds that I
I
never
don't know. I
played.
really need 20 yards of hempen rope.
The card you just described of finding finding a mundane item that you need versus you play this card, the bad guy has to stop and talk to you.
That was
The
great.
the love interest card was my favorite.
I never got to play it.
The
Well,
one
it
time
got played once, and then it got refuted by the fact that we're surrounded by a bunch of do-gooders. Boo.
What?
No, it was
wanted to go
refuted
fuck
by
a
the fact that
vampire. Oh, yeah.
the thing you were trying to seduce had no genitals.
What? It was a
You don't
vampire. I'm not talking about me.
I thought you were talking about a Sararak.
Oh, you wouldn't let me play it. I'm talking about the fact that Nina wanted to fuck a
Oh.
vampire, and then all of you guys were like, but morality.
And they're
She
just like,
can't do
you know
that.
what he wants to, and they're just like, it doesn't matter, we can end the fight here, and they're just like, no, we want to fight. No, we'll be fine fighting. I'm just like, but Vampire Lord. I could, like, all the mythical creatures.
Idiot.
Yeah. I don't think it was about morality so much as it was, like, good sense.
You distracted him long enough for me and KP over there to chop his head off.
Ha. Well,
Just
card went
saying.
to waste in the end. For me.
Another thing that I designed just for this campaign was the magic system. I would use this magic system again. What I did was I took the magic system as described in the Superpowers Companion of Savage Worlds and modified it a little bit so that just arcane spellcasters had access to it. I realized that therein lie my mistake of only spellcasters had access to all this power. If I had to do the campaign all over again from the start, I would have said everybody here sitting at the table is a spellcaster in some way. Although it was in line with the fiction that everybody had decided on for Ebena, that the spellcasters in this world were few and far between, and they are not godlike in their ability. I feel like for a group of players, having 1 or 2 or 3 players sitting around the table of 8, just with godlike power and everybody else just kind of on par with regular people was way too unbalancing for a game.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Jordan, as one of our spellcasters, I'll let you speak for yourself. But as a non-spellcaster...
Thanks.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to speak for Jordan. So, Jordan really, the whole game, just wished that he had the bigger genitalia spell. Because Talon had just a micro penis. The whole game. And it really,
4 times, dude.
it really affected the way that you just dealt with, well, everyone. And that's why the army eventually fell under my command, because you were just inadequate.
I was trying to compensate with haste.
Trying to... You just can't get in there and just fucking jackhammer. Anyway, I was trying to be nice. I'll let Jordan speak. But first, I'm going to speak as a non-magic user. You know, as one of the majority. I can speak for the minority. And in all seriousness, I did think that the way the game played out, with that fact that spellcasters were so few and far between, magic was nigh dead to the world. I appreciated how, as we progressed, with a spellcaster as our leader and mentor for most of the game, I really appreciated that you did give us non-casters the ability to recognize some spells. Like, you know, from what you've seen, you're pretty sure that this is a divination spell, and it looks like it was cast by a pretty powerful caster. And that's all you can tell. You know, my character had knowledge arcane, but could not cast a damn thing. I had the micropenis. And I also, although I completely agree with everything you said, Clayton, about doing this again, for what our world was, it was neat to have that, wow, Talon is fucking godlike in many ways. We have to travel weeks across the ocean, and he could just teleport there. And it was an interesting struggle that I cannot speak about. But it was, as a non-magic user, at least pretty fascinating, and I wouldn't have this campaign any other way, although I can respect how you want to do future campaigns differently.
Yeah, the fact that you guys were the leaders of an entire mercenary army is what negated Talon's ability to just pop across the world at a whim. I mean, he could pop across and take individual people, but there was no way he could conceivably take an entire army. And that is where most of the adventure actually lie within the campaign, was the process of going from place to place to place. I feel like that's the only saving grace for having Talon with a teleport spell that can just whisk him across the world. That was the only balancing agent against that great power.
Didn't help that the world was flat.
Yeah.
So I could literally see anywhere I needed to go as, like, a free action.
I don't know. I feel really torn, because I was not a spellcaster, but having the fact that we had somebody who could teleport, and one of the only people in the world that can teleport, one, it made us special. Two, if we couldn't teleport to the rest of the world, we couldn't have united the entire realm against stopping the Lich. And I think that was one of my favorite parts of the campaign, is that we were special and we had agency. And I feel like if everybody in the world had access to this, it would have been completely different, because our entire mission was to safeguard the world against these powerful magical items. And that would have been kind of a nigh action if magic was just so well ingrained into the people and into the culture. They wouldn't have been special.
I want to talk a little bit about all the player characters' perception of what the storyline was versus what I had as the real storyline.
Okay.
The player characters decided at the very beginning of the campaign that what they were going to do was assemble these 8 at the time thought there were only 7 artifacts of the great schools of magic and destroy them. That was the driving force of player characters going from place to place in the campaign world. My storyline was, you guys go to the Tomb of Horrors, you kick a hornet's nest, and piss off a very, very powerful ancient evil that is then going to come and destroy the world. Everything else you guys were doing was just kind of ancillary to that main storyline. There was no reason to destroy all of those magical artifacts in the game world story. That was just a decision that all the player characters made. The fact, or the belief that all of these items were evil and needed to be destroyed, that was entirely created within this circle of people sitting around the
fake
table.
news. It's always been that way. These items have always been evil. I know all the best evil items, and I know how to destroy them.
And that is why I loved whenever you guys went up against the Zephyr, who said, no, we're not just going to give over this item so you can destroy it. Why are you wanting to do this insane thing? And the whole, you guys having to convince them of something that really was insane. Like, destroying all these powerful things that could have been used as basically nuclear deterrent against this coming evil.
You can't use nukes as nuclear deterrent, Clayton!
Kyle listened to a podcast about this.
Yeah, one! And now I'm really smart about it.
Dan Carlin. What a man.
Hardcore history. Big shout out. Please listen to our show, Dan.
Dan, please.
Very tangential to hardcore history. And Dan Carlin's countdown to Armageddon about the World War I, his World War I series. The beginning of World War I looked an awful lot like the beginning of this campaign world.
The beginning or the end?
The beginning of World War I.
Because I would also make a case for the end, but we can probably get to that.
No, the end of the campaign world looks an awful lot like the intervening years before World War II.
The interwar period.
The reason why I'm drawing
So
the
that
World
makes
War
sense.
I parallel is because we had this central power, and all around them, all of the other major powers have alliances amongst each other, promoting trade agreements that, hey, we're not going to go to war with each other. But you've got this main big central power that really doesn't have these same ties, much like how Germany before World War I didn't really have the Triple Entente, whereas this world's Triple Entente was basically the
Orphée Nymph Alliance!
And the Celians and the Zephyr.
No.
And then you've got these two, compared to those minor powers of the Vikinger and Elves who just get into it and start killing each other to kick off this big war, much like Serbia and Austria-Hungary.
Wait, did the Zephyr have Austria-Hungary's back or Serbia's
You're
back?
Germany, dude.
No,
No, the humans were Germany.
The humans were Germany.
The Zephyr are more like France.
Yeah! We have your back, Elvis! That's not French. That's
I
not
don't
a French
know if
accent.
you should
That's
be-
not a French
I
accent.
really don't know if you should be excited about being France in World War I.
Maybe you should tell me why the Maginot Line, baguette.
But that made the Orphée Nymph Alliance England.
No, I see them more as Russia.
I'll take
The
it.
Celians would have been England.
What up?
See, when I look at this, I think the Vikinger were Austria-Hungary, the Elves were Serbia, and then Big Brother Russia, aka the Zephyr over here, had to come to the Elves' defense.
I can do a much better Russian accent. Can I be Russia?
And that's just because of that whole tie there, and then humans are Germany, and then I think you were right there with like the Triple Entente, the Vikinger, or not the Vikinger, the Orphée Nymph Alliance. But we're just no one on the podcast can see this map, so we're over here gesturing to something.
So there is a picture of this map that I've already posted on the previous podcast, and I will put a link for this one as well. So anybody can look at this map and see exactly what we are talking about and gesturing toward that doesn't come through on an audio-only podcast.
Do be glad, however, that you can't see everything we're seeing.
Yeah, you can't imagine this guy's face.
No, it's kind of like a Picasso and a fucking Jackson Pollock, except it's just snot thrown against canvas.
So art,
Thank you.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course. Anyway, moving past that.
Let's talk more about the end of the campaign, when it was more like interwar period.
Yeah.
How we had this empire that tried to take everything over, failed, and then a single figure rose from the ashes to unite, bring their country out of a depression, and...
Woodrow Wilson!
No!
We're talking about Woodrow Wilson.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That milquetoast motherfucker.
Hey, wait a minute, but the Woodrow Wilson started League of Nations, close enough.
Yeah,
This is
okay.
best
Well,
of
so what we're getting at
World
here
unification here.
was the end
It's
of
also
the...
very racist.
Yeah. No.
Yikes.
Unfortunate. The end of this game saw a very different, I'd like to think, political landscape from the start, in some regards. You still had some of the old alliances. You know, you had the Orcs and Imps and the Fae, and you had that old bastion that was the Zephyr the piranha people whose name I don't remember.
Sawhagen.
Sawhagen.
Racist fuck.
That's me. And the pretty much dunzo elves at this point.
Dunzo elves?
Their birth rate declines pretty bad, I imagine. Then we killed a bunch of them, so I don't know how the elves are doing these days. But then the Vikinger and a couple of the other races up there, the Suvi-san and did the Magma people have a correct name as well? Did we ever?
No.
They're just magma
just
people?
magma people.
All right. They formed their own triple
They're like
alliance.
Iceland.
You're right. And so now you have just 3, and the humans are still there, I guess.
Human lands got pretty fucked over.
Yeah, so you now have, like, a loose truce between, like, 3 different power blocks in this world. And I want to say, the worst part about this is, had things played out a little differently in the campaign, at least in my head, I think world peace and a actual, not League of Nations, but, like, effective United Nations could have been formed, but certain things happened in the campaign that led to that.
Yeah, you were an asshole.
No,
You did that. So by certain things, KD of course means the fact that he turned into. Say it with me, everyone. Are you ready? Adolf Hitler.
Oh, sorry.
Adolf Hitler.
I detest that.
Everybody hated that
combination.
character.
I liked Ingwe.
Everything hated him at the end.
But just like a lot of people in America really liked Adolf, they loved that man. Before they were like, "All right, fine, we'll go fight him."
I was secretly maneuvering you towards a throne the entire time.
Oh, thanks, Talon. Talon.
Desdemona still kind of likes him, but that's because she's a dumb optimist.
Well, let me, I
These are
guess,
pretty things.
throw a little
So Lecter hates
context onto
Straight out.
Ingwe.
Wanted to kill
So-
my now wife.
I think it's been mentioned on the podcast previously. My old character, Magnus, also a
Rest in
Vikinger,
peace.
R.I.P.
a true warrior, and good man in many regards.
Savior of us all.
When I had been playing him before he passed, tragically, he had gotten, I think, was it an after adventure card that gave me like a loyal follower?
Yeah.
Clayton? Okay. And he had gotten that, and Clayton and I came up with this guy, Ingwe, who just, he had been working with the vampire people at the Tomb of Horrors, and so then but he was just very convinced by what Magnus was, preaching, this different doctrine of, like, Vikinger can be a peaceful race. And he really bought into it. However, Magnus dies, and so I decided I want to play Ingwe. And for the first couple sessions, I'm not really sure what I want him to be. I had the heroic trait on my sheet, because I did, in my head, I think, want him to see sort of a continuation of Magnus, but at the same time, you gotta differentiate those characters. And so, I really know when the session was, but at some point I'm like, wow, I just really want Ingwe to be this political, Machiavellian, like, maneuvering dickbag. And my reasoning for that was that, when he first showed up, he was this 100% like loyal follower to Magnus. And all of a sudden, though, with Magnus dead, you had to remember where he came from. He had been willingly working with a group of evil Vikinger vampires at some creepy tomb. Like, that's not exactly, a fucking letter of recommendation for how good of a person you are. And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, it makes sense that, like, he tries to turn over this new leaf while Magnus is around, because he's just taken in by, like, his charisma and his message. But once Magnus is gone, his reason for trying to do that disappears.
Magnus is dead, everything is permissible.
Well, not even necessarily that, but, like, he starts to regress to what he was, and had Magnus lived past that point,
May
I think
rest in peace.
the Vikinger would have been very different. I think Ingwe would have been very different.
Yeah.
I would like to draw another parallel from a World War One,
Oh no.
end of World War One, 1920s analogy between your two characters. Magnus was very much like Lenin, and Ingwe was very much like Stalin.
It's very true.
Cody Rasputin?
I ended up having a lot of fun being that Machiavellian pseudo-Stalin figure, I guess.
I wish we had a Boris Yeltsin.
I don't know, but, like, it took me a while, but I really started to think, like, why would he act this way besides me just wanting to do something different with the character, and I thought that was a pretty good reason for him to, default back to that. But, point being here, had Magnus lived, I think we would have seen a very different political
Magnus
game
is a good person.
post-world.
It would have been so good.
Oh well. I personally love the way it ended. Like, I got everything I wanted out of that post game, and I know that it like irritated people, but God, it was so much fun.
I respected Ingwe's and, by association, your political maneuvering there at the end, especially with your decision to let the Vikinger during the final battle. The Vikinger came. Fun fact: we united every single major race and nation in the entire world army, to come and stop Acererak and his undead forces.
I thought it was all but one.
No, we got everyone. We united everyone.
Oh.
Yeah, the humans were they were the biggest dog in the fight at that point. Their assistance
Home
was
turf.
assumed because it was their homelands.
And
They were
we even
getting
got
fucked.
the Seraphim. We even got the Seraphim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about the Nephilim?
We killed them
Oh,
all.
they're
Well, we
banned.
banished
They're
them.
We banished
They had been banished at that point.
Oh, right.
We united everybody. And during this final battle, the Vikingers show up. They're one of the closest race.
Well, how many races are there?
7. We was a 7-nation
Major
army.
ones,
Lol.
yeah.
7.
So we united everybody. And the Vikingers show up pretty much first because they're the closest to the fight for the most part. And pretty quickly, KD surprises many people by allowing the Vikinger, in fact encouraging the Vikinger, to raid the coastline a little bit before finally being like, all right, we'll come join the fight. And that was cool. People were like, why, Kyle? And would you like to talk a little bit about why you did that?
I figured, the Vikinger really needed to get some confidence back. Because the backstory there was they had been completely shattered in this, Armageddon war where their whole culture, their whole religion, everything focused down to this do-or-die fight that they lost because the PCs were there. Let's be real, the elves would have gotten wrecked otherwise. But in all seriousness, he thought that was a good idea. And in my head, I always saw Ingwe as more of a Gustavus Adolphus figure, Sweden and Norwegian, kings in 16 to 1700s that were just forces of iron will. And so he had this whole idea of the Viking are going to be what I want them to be. And if I have to drag them kicking and screaming, into modernity, I'll do it. And so part of this idea was, let's get some resources to start rebuilding and, get some confidence back, raid some humans. I'll even lead this to establish some credibility. And then there's also the challenger that showed up and was like, I want to lead it. And he, spared his life after he beat him and said, well, you're going to be the rear admiral. And he proved out to be loyal. So I guess what I wanted from that was sort of just to show the lengths that Ingwe would go to, get the Vikinger back to where they needed to be. Plus, let's be real, humans weren't going to, be able to stop me, necessarily. They were not in any position.
They had a lot of
to do
their
so.
plates.
You are so bad.
I love that. And to bring this back around to Clayton's initial question of how we each saw the story in the game, that's the beauty of this campaign, and maybe many long campaigns, is that any person's perspective, any character's perspective, could be a fantasy series in their own right. You could do a series, you could write Ebena, the novelization, and any one of us could be the focus of a main character. I just think we all had some really great moments, and I want to get back to that question about each of us describing from our perspective what the story seemed like.
Because, you could totally take it as the political intrigue Ebena, which were a lot, specifically after the Vikinger, was a lot of time with political intrigue. We had an entire court session where we, took an entire race called the Nephilim to trial. I thought that was really cool. But, getting back to Ingwe's endgame, at first, it felt like it kind of came out of nowhere, but after game, I was like, oh man, why didn't we see this coming sooner? And I thought that was really, really well developed. But I'm still personally hurt that my emotional brother would do this to me. He betrayed me.
I don't understand, and this is actually something I want to hear responses to, but I don't understand why everyone was like, man, Ingwe really just, twisted the knife in, when in reality, he really didn't know you guys all that well, with the exception of maybe Alkir and Talon.
No, Slixer hated you the whole time.
I know you hated me the whole time, but...
I was fine with you killing humans.
Oh, thanks. Well, that's what I figured, worthless race.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for you to kill my girlfriend, fiance, wife.
You threatened to kill me a couple of times.
Well, like I said, just a martial law, no tolerance policy.
Yes,
werewolves?
obviously Ivy didn't like you. I mean, she didn't hate you, but, like, she gets it, but...
Well, Ingwe started, and to be fair to the audience, Ingwe
self-hatred.
started out the first 2 sessions very different from how he ended. And that was my own inability to decide how I wanted to roleplay the character. He started off as, like, kind of snarky and, like, wannabe charming. But at the end, I was just full on, like, fucking Swedish dictator mode.
Mm-hmm.
Which I didn't mind, but
I don't
know, it's a good lesson to, like, I think,
know.
try to establish what you want to do before the character. And I've talked on the podcast before about how I struggle to really find my character's footing until a couple sessions in. But it just feels so silly to me when I look down at the sheet and I'm like, oh, yep, got that heroic trait that I was gonna use.
Well, that was the whole foundation of my character. I have the noble trait. Noble Birdman. Okay.
And the curious hindrance.
Well, yeah.
That was a racial hindrance, though. That was.
Oh, I didn't
that was-
realize.
All Zephyr had it.
All Zephyr are curious?
Yeah, that's why you're.
Oh, man!
That's why the Zephyr were the explorers. That's why their god was the light of the world, sending them out to discover and learn.
I love my bird sons and daughters.
Aw.
I think that was, and I want to bring that up really quick. Everyone here had a clear favorite race and a stake. Like, we all made races, but we all had favorites. You know, for KP over there, it was the Zephyr. For Nina, it was the Seraphim. For Hayley, it was the Nymphs.
The nymphs.
For Lanina, it was the Celians. And you know what, though, Jordan? You might be the outlier here, because, like, obviously I'm the Vikinger.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to...
What's your favorite race, Jordan?
The humans.
Oh, the race you wanted destroyed the most.
Yeah.
Well, you were half human.
Did you have a favorite, Clayton?
I did not have a favorite. I did not have a dog in that fight.
It's right in his notes. It says my favorite were the Zephyr. I loved those birds.
But I would like to point out that you guys, each one of you said a different race is your favorite race. And I'm sure Beth would have given an additional one if she were here. But that's 7 different races. There were a total of 17 races and subraces.
Very popular in this
So you said
world.
there were only
Too
7
many.
races.
There were 7 nations.
Yeah, 7 nations, 7 major powers.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't mean to insinuate that we had no less than 17 different races.
My assumption was we got every race in the world to rally up, and I'm just like, no, we didn't. No, we didn't.
That's one of my, in world creation hindsight things, is if I could go back and, like, restrict it down to just the player character races, I feel like a lot of those points that were spent on other races just were lost.
Yeah.
They just got spent on making those races when they could have been spent on doing interesting things in the world to make the starting world a little bit more dynamic.
That's a
Yeah,
fair
are you
point.
telling me that making the hedgehog people weren't like
Shout out
wasn't
to
an
Laura.
interesting thing? You know, I'm gonna change my answer. The hedgehog people, definitely my favorite.
So
The cryptids of the world.
And I think that's kind of funny, because I invested the most in the orcs starting off. And, like, I really only put a couple things into the Vikinger, yet ended up, like, attaching my flag to that one.
I think we always knew.
Yeah.
They were, like, close to my heart, but they were, like, the bastard children. I was like, yes, orcs.
Yeah, married
You
to
get
the
all the
orcs,
nice
fucking the
things.
Viking, their mistress.
Basically.
I get it. I get it.
Katie, you started singing Swedish pagans the moment you created the Vikings.
Look, I'm not saying I wasn't impartial. I'm just saying, on paper, I did put more into the orcs, technically.
Everyone.
That was a joint effort, because I know that you were building the orcs to be, like, really fighty, and over me on the little nymph side of the island, I was like, but let's be friends. And then I made them noble, and then you went with it, and we built an empire together. Remember the good times when we weren't fighting? The empire. Think of the empire.
What were you gonna say, Clayton?
I don't remember.
Oh, darn.
Well, we haven't answered the question from way back. Like, I want to hear everyone from their perspective, try and keep it as unmarred by other perspectives as possible.
Impossible.
What do you see the plot summary, the back of the book be reading?
Well, why don't you start us off?
I don't want to.
Oh,
I've talked a lot this session.
but we love your voice.
All right, Nina Richner, go.
Oh, fuck you.
Anyone can go,
Pretty please.
but me.
I'll go, I guess. So this is from like, our perspective, like, our character's perspective, what the story of Ebena was.
Not necessarily your character, but just you or your characters, like...
We're like a mix of both.
Because I was very surprised by Clayton's perspective of Hornet's Nest stirred up in Tomb of Horrors, you fight a Sararak, everything else is ancillary. Like...
Okay, so I guess for me, this story was one of, like, a group growing closer together through a task. And so that, like, we had all these people here that were under Talon, Jordan's character, who had known each other for a while but weren't really, like, super close, and sort of had gotten closer up until, like, the sort of building to the end of the Vikinger invasion arc with Magnus's death. To me, that was what the overall arching story was the story of this group and their relationships and where it went. And it sort of was like a rise and a fall. So you had the rise and the high point, and you kind of had the fall toward the back end of the game. And so destroying the artifacts was sort of the lens through which that story was told. Like, that was just the journey they were on, while they were also on this other journey that was, like, sort of the overarching one. Because you sort of had that high point, and then, you know, Magnus's death sort of threw everything into disarray, and I think it's fair to say, from my perspective, after that, everyone, and this may be tainted by my own opinion, because I was definitely doing my own thing, but everyone started to have their own irons in the fire, for sure, as compared to before, when people were just very, like, we're this close-knit group that's going to destroy these artifacts, but then after the Vikinger invasion, everyone started being like, well, I can do other things in this world. There's a lot I can do. And so that group dynamic that had been very close-knit sort of started to separate. And I know for sure, you know, I was playing a new character that didn't give a fuck about you guys, so he was just like, I'll do my own thing. But that's sort of what it is for me. It's the story of this group that became very close, and then by the end of the game, I think it's safe to say, sort of went their own ways.
I think I kind of saw it as a Lord of the Rings-esque hero's journey of, like, to the end of the world and back, we have to destroy these artifacts and save all of Ebena. And it really has, and I mean, we did that. We went to the end of the world, we destroyed the artifacts, we came back, and there was, like, an extra battle in there. Like, against, like, the big bad! Like, I call it an extra battle, but, like, against the big bad of a Sararak. But, yeah. It's mostly just, like, a very, not simple, but a hero's journey.
I'm with you with one slight difference in the fact of I saw this as a group of people desperately trying to save the world, and as it went on, we each decided that we had different ideas of what it means to save the world. Specifically, we all got together like, we have to stop the magic. And then it was like, well, maybe some people aren't worth saving. And then at the end, we're like, no, we have to save it, not from this magic, but from this overarching force. And I think it's going to end with, we're going to have to eventually save the world from what Ingwe has started. And that makes me real sad.
Fuck you. There's a lot more going on there.
I know, but I truly think that it was a journey of a Lord of the Rings-esque epic of us each individually trying to save the world from something. And I think as the game went on, that became to differ, but I think that's what made the story so rich.
Well, you said you wanted the back of the book summary?
Sure.
Okay. Yes. Well, picture this. A band of misfits gather together through their travels and slowly become friends and yet maybe even family with one another. But as the time progresses and as issues get harder and as the world begins to fall apart, we realize that we have to destroy the artifacts that have been created and born from the world that we knew before the world we knew existed. But the rest of the world doesn't agree. What are we gonna do? The worlds don't match up. Our world versus their world, and now a Sararak's world. What will come of all of these heroes and villains, and who will win out in the end? Kind of just a big mash.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. That was my viewpoint on it. I just thought it would be more fun and dramatic to get that way.
I love it.
Okay, you two.
And then they stared at each other for 30 minutes.
Alright, I'll go. I guess my whole thing was, it was about, like, for my character specifically, it was about cleaning up the mess that my order had left behind. It was a mistake to have created all these powerful artifacts, and, you know, through betrayal and their own folly, they let them fall into whoever's hands. And so it was very much like fall of the Soviet Union, you know, rampant weapons of mass destruction all around. And so my whole thing was seeing if I could manipulate a bunch of people into being heroes and try to make them better along the way to accomplish this goal that I couldn't possibly do by myself, so that my conscience could then be absolved so I could do what I wanted to do all along, which is fucking leave this place, which was nothing but pain and misery to me all along. But it was about, the corrupting effects of power, and especially unearned power, which is why I thought the artifacts themselves were such a liability that anybody with any magical talent could pick one up and be hugely powerful and do whatever they wanted. And I wanted to destroy them because I knew if I had them all, then I'd be tempted to basically become an Acererak type of character. So that's what it was.
Thanks for not becoming a Acererak. I really appreciate it.
And I tried really hard to help people out in the stuff that they did. A lot of my spells made it so that I could only do just, like a one-shot kind of thing. But anywhere I could, I'd lift people up telekinetically and put them somewhere. When I got to, I'd put haste on people or, whatever I could to just boost the group. I wanted to be more like a Professor X kind of character in that way than anything else. But man, I gotta say, with that fucking teleport spell, a lot of times I felt like the Flash standing around tapping my feet waiting on Batman to put his boots on. That was like half the game for me, was like, holy fuck, I could have been there, done it, come back, and then we could have dealt with something else. So if you're gonna take a spell out, take teleport out. I would have had a lot more fun without teleport, but I couldn't resist it as an option.
That's why I didn't take it.
We also would have been pretty fucked sometimes without teleport, Jordan, so.
It was pretty clutch on a few occasions. We probably would have never found the Seraphim without it.
We would have absolutely died.
We all would have died.
At the
Yes.
Vikinger battle.
Yeah, you all would have died. Well, I take that back. One of the optional rules that I was using is called Blaze of Glory, and it's from the Savage Rifts campaign setting. And the way that this rule works is before your character makes any rolls to see if they die, you activate this rule that says, okay, I'm healed, and I have all of my bennies for the session, so I get to narrate rather than roll dice for what happens next. And within Blaze of Glory, it was entirely within the wheelhouse of KD's character, or KD as a player, to dictate if you guys could have escaped in that situation. It just so happened that there was a way for you guys to escape without any problems from that situation. But I'm telling you right now that if Blaze of Glory had not been activated, you guys probably were not going to get out of that situation at that point.
Magnus, R.I.P., the hero of the story.
May he rest in peace.
I love him so much.
So speaking of people manipulated by Talon, Jordan, your plot descriptor dovetails so nicely with the way I saw this campaign. I look at it as a loss of innocence on a global scale, perpetuated and catalyzed by a mentor/manipulator. And I love it, first of all. Your decision to kind of absolve your guilt by helping a group of people to become adventurers and to follow your goals of destroying these artifacts, that perpetuated everything. We wouldn't have gone to the Tomb of Horrors and kicked up the Hornet's Nest if it weren't for that. We also probably wouldn't have rallied together to stop the Viking or Death Army. I say loss of innocence, not so much for our player characters as a whole. I think maybe Hayley's character, it's actually certainly Hayley's character, not even a maybe. Maybe Selixer a little bit, tiny bit.
What do you mean by innocence?
I'm not talking about sex. Put it back on, put it in your pants, put it in the pants. I think the realization that, like, you had to do some fighting.
Yeah.
You couldn't be a pacifist all the time. Also, your goal to kind of bring magic to the masses. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like that changed a bit after you saw the effect magic could have on the population. I mean, very much, I didn't think about it until this podcast recording, how World War I-ish this game was. We had all these amazing tools and technology that were held by a few, but there were several parties interested in making them available to, if not the masses, then at least a few more people. We saw a lot of different things that caused the kind of whole world, this big flat earth, to kind of stop and go, whoa, that sucked. We don't want to do that again. Let's never have a war again. Now, will Ebena have a war again? It's probably going to be a World War II. It's probably going to be a World War II. But I very much see the whole globe, it's not a globe, the whole plane losing innocence, realizing magic hadn't been really around and studied for a couple hundred years since you were in the
like 50
Ordo
years.
Mysterio. Only 50? I thought it was a couple hundred. You were a couple hundred years old.
No,
No, you're like 100 something.
I was like maybe 70 or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. I wound up like living through like hundreds of years of experience.
That's what I was thinking.
No, I started off being like 60 or 70
Oh,
years
Karina's
old.
character was older than you by a little bit.
She was a
That's
full
right.
elf,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Well, regardless, the whole plane losing this sense of we can live as isolated nation states with our own goals. We don't have to look at anything around us. Magic isn't real. None of this shit's real. This is our life. This is the world. To all of a sudden coming together and in a very short amount of time forming way past fantasy, way past like fucking, you know, the Carlings and like all these like early kind of alliances you see. Is that right, Kyle?
In like medieval history.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was, I would definitely say, despite the technology level of this game, which was, I think, Clayton was like,
No gunpowder.
early-
Totally pre-gunpowder.
Pre-gunpowder.
But we jumped.
1400s maybe.
Yeah.
1300s.
Technology level. Yeah.
But like, you're right, I think culturally and politically, we jumped way up there in like,
Yeah.
the 1800s.
Yeah, the like particularly the way you guys
1900s.
invested in the races during world creation, you really catapulted them culturally way beyond the technology level. I'd say, yeah, definitely an equivalent of the 1800s as far as
I mean,
society.
if you'll let me geek out here a second.
Oh, please do.
I don't know. We're
You're only a
RPG podcast.
I don't know if we're allowed to geek out.
What are you trying to
You're
do?
only a seasoned geek in real life,
So,
remember.
you have this idea in this world that is not really common in a lot of fantasy settings of nationalism.
Mhm.
Like, we all, for whatever reason, unspokenly sat down and said, well, our nations are all, like, full of self-determination, and people that identify as members of that nation, not subjects to a king or a crown or an emperor. I think that's fair to say. I don't know if there's any exceptions to that.
The exception is the humans, which I intentionally put in, like, a very warlike, undeveloped kind of state. Like, they're like classical Greece. They've got this
Like
huge
city-states.
island, and they've just got city-states where everyone's kind of a dickhead to anyone who's not from the city-state.
You know, like, the Vikinger were made up of different tribes, but they all, at the end of the day, were like, well, we're still Vikinger. And that's something that, you know, to your point, Kyle, you don't see a whole lot in, like, the Carling Age, you know, where you have... There's a little historical tidbit here, but there was a kingdom that was formed called Lotharingia that was literally not divided by any sort of, like, national or, you know, cultural lines, but just because one of the sons of Charlemagne, or actually a couple years down the line, a couple kids down the line from Charlemagne, needed a kingdom, and, you know, Frankish inheritance laws said you had to split it between the sons. So, like, well, we'll just make a entirely new kingdom, and you're all subordinate to that guy. Doesn't matter if you're German or French or Frankish or whatever your culture identity is. And so you didn't have that in this game. I thought that was very interesting, because, like I said, in a lot of fantasy games, it's very much so just kingdoms and empires and everything else.
I'm not a big fantasy fan. I've said that many times in this podcast, but I loved seeing this world out of necessity because of the actions of Talon, and very rapidly arrive at this very kind of between World War I, World War II state, which is where we left Ebena. And I think that it's very, very, very cool how this year long?
We started making the world on November 6th. So, and
Just about
right now we're recording on October 5.
So, you know, like 10 and a half, 11 month long campaign, went places I don't think any of us could have predicted.
Absolutely.
Is that a correct statement?
Oh, yeah.
Even Clayton.
I definitely saw this being... I definitely didn't see Magnus dying, and you know, Lanina will tell y'all that I have a martyr complex when it comes to RPGs.
It's true.
But and on top of all that, though, I really did not see this getting as political as it did, which I love the political angle in this game. I would love to play an entire game that did this sort of political thing, but that's just sort of right up my alley. I really thought this was going to be group travels around different locations, gets those items. Maybe there's something we have to fight at the end, which, well, that turned out true, but I definitely didn't anticipate it being what it was. And all of a sudden, like I said, this game just became way more than I ever thought it was going to be in terms of like storyline and everything else. I think Kyle's right. I don't think any of us really could have predicted that it was going to end the way it did for sure, starting out.
The whole idea that Ingwe and Alkir had to create this new world order that he kept joking about, but that's kind of what it was at first, was we could actually unite every nation in this plane. That was cooked up 3/4 of the way through the whole game.
Oh yeah, there was definitely not
a huge motivating factor.
Yeah, like at no point did you and I sit down last November and be like, man, wouldn't it be funny if we like made the United Nations? That just really ties into this idea that all of a sudden these like 1900s ideas sort of crept into this game, but at the beginning I think we were all thinking purely high medieval, start of the Renaissance era ideas.
That was the established story whenever we started world creation. That was that was one of the questions that I'd asked you, and that was how the committee voted.
And at some point, these other themes and ideas started getting explored and like not even infiltrating, but integrated into the game that were just very beyond.
And it didn't feel forced.
Oh yeah,
it felt pretty natural, the progression.
So I just think that's very interesting. Like,
it didn't hurt that we had a floating aircraft carrier from which we could call the shots for the rest of the world.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, like I said, my plot points for this campaign, for the story that I had, was basically 2 plot points. The player characters kick a hornet's nest, and then down the line they receive the full wrath of what they have wrought. And beyond that, everything else that happened in the campaign was entirely character-driven. Character-driven, the way that the world was created, and then the way that the player characters interacted with the world. I had practically no hand in the development of the story.
That's kind of amazing. Go us, go team.
I mean, the conflict of the Viking attacking the elves, that was during world creation. That was the last round where we figured out what was currently active in the world. The fact that the Nephilim and the Seraphim were so at odds with each other was set up in world creation. The Zephyr were harboring the Nephilim and protecting them essentially from the rest of the world, set up in world creation. Everything that happened was just, you guys set it up, and then I hit the first domino to get them moving, and then you guys set up the pattern of the dominoes from that point on.
You were Gavrilo Princip.
Should we return to this world, or if not, there are some things that I still question about this world that I really wish I would have had answers for, or at least I would like answers in the future. I want to know what happened to the deities, why they have abandoned this world, specifically the Seraphim were trying to find their gods. Why has this world been abandoned? And I felt like there were possibly, like, hints that you gave us, but I think I'm just not seeing them, or I want to see them where they don't exist. But that's something I want to know, or at least in the future I would like to know.
There were very small hints dropped about what was going on. If I hadn't started losing interest, we would have gone into it more in depth. I think it's very possible that I will return to Ebena at some point, and we'll. If you guys want to answer those questions, those are the questions that'll get answered.
Okay, sweet. Anybody else have any mysteries that they felt were unanswered and or questions that they wish they would have known now that we are no longer playing in this world?
Okay.
What's on the bottom?
Sea turtles.
All the way down.
Yep, turtles all the way down.
Turtles all the way down.
Oh, that's cool.
I looked one time. I didn't see any turtles.
You're just blind to turtles. Just like the...
Oh, you needed the illusion glass.
Yes.
They're illusory turtles.
Yeah.
I see. Of course they would be.
Now that the campaign is completely over, is there anything that anyone doesn't want revealed about what your character might have said or done? Because there were some secrets that were going on at the table.
Tell me all the secrets!
You hold one of the secrets. That's basically why I was asking, because you're holding a big secret, and
At this point, there's nothing that can be done. It'd be cool to hear about it.
I don't want anybody to know that Selixer and I double-teamed a Sararak.
Yeah, right. That would be, like, bragging rights at that point.
Tell us your secrets.
Apparently Sararak doesn't have genitals, so...
You can't double-team him.
They rotted off.
Oh!
Doesn't mean you can't double-team him.
He's got dusty gashes.
Hey, they make plastic adherents for that.
Okay. We don't have plastic in Ebena.
They make rock adherents for that.
I don't think I have any secrets. If I do, I'm fine with whatever.
Okay. Before we go into secrets, one thing I want to say that that I feel like I made a big mistake with this campaign is it came out good in the end because it did switch, but I feel like it was a mistake on my part to have such a focus on a protagonist in a campaign with so many player characters.
What do you mean?
Up until the end of the Vikinger, up until he apparently died, didn't actually die, Talon was very much the protagonist of the story.
We all can see that.
I don't think I agree.
Then Alkir really became the protagonist.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Alkir was always the protagonist.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, but also I'm a storyteller and I see things through a storytelling lens, so I think it's unavoidable that there might have been a protagonist that kind of emerged.
Are you saying that you wish that at no point had there been like a sole protagonist?
I'm saying I wish I would have done better about having stories going on for each one of you.
That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah,
though.
Especially in a group of 8.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're so insistent
like
on all of us staying together.
Yeah. I know I didn't do anything for Beth. I've told her I'm sorry, but yeah, I had no story for Beth's character of Anna. I feel like I really let Nina R down with Ivy.
No, but then I got my 15 minutes of fame, and I'm fine with that.
You almost had a few more minutes of fame, though.
Not even with the serpent, but with the
cage.
The cage
incident.
and the fucking saboteur and hunt against the Nephilim. Like, I think I was fine.
You almost got a couple more minutes, though.
I was gonna ask, I remember briefly we talked about werewolf hunters being around, but then I never got to see them, and I'm not complaining, but...
Yeah, if I hadn't started losing steam, losing enthusiasm, they were gonna play a major role.
Oof. Well, I think that, I could understand how that would be a concern, which was also partly why I used that last round of character creation to, force something into the story. That also was a cool story thing, and, in one hand, but on the other hand, I was like, well, this will be something that at least, my character can have some sort of, in one way or another, attachment to that's happening in the world. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, I guess I can understand on one hand, Talon as the group leader and the person who, out of character, when we first decided what this campaign was going to be about, your proposition of, let's go destroy these artifacts, won. So I think it makes kind of sense that you had some sort of protag status, and then it switched to Alkir.
That was, me being uncomfortable with that is exactly one half of the reason why I decided to kill myself at that point.
I never felt like Jordan/Talon stole the show in any way. Mm-mm. Anybody disagree? You're very welcome to.
I'll close my ears and won't listen to the podcast.
No, I don't think it was a matter of you stole the spotlight, but I definitely felt like if we were an anime show, your character would be a bit larger, and everybody would be having cool anime poses in the back. But I still
you're
feel
the one
really
that's
cool.
Running in the rain, Jordan. The rest of us are just walking.
For fans of .hack, you're like the Ovan.
I don't know what that means.
Don't worry about it.
You mean that Sword Art Online novel?
Shut up. Ugh. I never felt like you stole the show. I never felt like, Clayton, you forced the show to be stolen. I can see how your character could be described as the first half protag, but I don't think it was ever, in a
It's
shitty
because
way.
you're, co-protag, I think.
Yeah.
So you're saying, as one of the protags, I have no right to speak about this?
No,
Alright, you all talk. How do you all feel about this? No, go ahead and lay it on me. I want to know.
I do feel like sometimes, certain characters got pushed to the side. Specifically, something that I felt really I wish I could have done a thing was Clayton had given me the opportunity to make a deal with the demon, and I put so much time and effort into thinking and planning about what I was going to do, and then trying to put it into effect, and then literally in the game be like, well, this is a subplot, it doesn't matter, and then waving away the fact that we deal with this and then we move on to something else.
Well, that was because we had 4 sessions left or something.
I know.
Right? I distinctly recall Clayton being like, normally we'd have a session about dealing with this, but in the end you guys defeat the demon and
I know, but it also felt the way that why have that? Because I put so much time and effort into thinking and plotting about that thing.
Well, we ruined a lot of Clayton's time and effort.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
Subplotting.
Is that, I feel like sometimes we got subplot hand-waved away because we put so much time into some other things that I wish we had more time to develop those side things. I wish we had more time to talk with, the werewolf hunters, or I could have dealt with the demon thing.
Talk with the werewolf hunters? Talk to them?
All you need to do to solve, issues between people is just talk it out, man.
Yeah,
even if you view the other people as inferior,
Let's
you
just
gotta
talk
talk
the dust
to
about away.
Serac next time.
The dust about away, if you will. I wish we would have had run-ins with Elixir's kids.
You got a giant
I wish we
Gila
had more
monster.
time for those
Giant
things.
Gila monster staring at you. What are you gonna do?
Talk
You're
to
gonna
it.
stab it with your kukri? No. You're gonna talk to it.
Anyway.
You're gonna be like, giant Gila monster, please don't bite me with your bacteria
At least
mouth.
I wasn't that bad as a pacifist.
So,
You did pacifist well, which is saying something.
I think that, there's not... I think Talon and Alkir were the lens in which, if we're examining this as, a third story, a third-person view of the story, you can just look down and say, okay, first half you're kind of looking at it through Talon's eyes, and the second half you're looking through Alkir's eyes. I've been in a lot of games where there has been clear protagonists that the plot focuses on and is the lens and through which everything's viewed. And I've kind of that's why I didn't necessarily have an issue with it, is I've been in other games where that sort of thing has happened. And I know that the way that you're I've handled it at least, has been to really double down on my character and really think a lot about what they would be doing right now, how they would handle these things, and then attempt to sort of, again, force my hand into the story at certain points and places and decide my character is now interested in this, even if they might not be so otherwise, or stuff like that. So, and I don't think that's inherently a negative thing. I think that that's just, unfortunately, sometimes that's the way games shake out through one way or another.
Have you ever considered that, and this is not an insult nor a compliment, that it's just in y'all two's personality to be the protagonists of games?
Yeah.
It's not a compliment! It's not a compliment. I'm just
Nor
saying.
an insult.
But
But kind of an insult.
I was kind of waiting to see
Kind
how
of a compliment.
Look, I was kind of waiting to see how they'd react, and I'm like, it's not however you took it.
Well, I think it's just a matter of fact we got Gryffindor kind of Slytherin-esque, both
Oh my
tenacious
God.
motherfuckers.
That's not-
These are deciding that you're a bunch of
books.
glory
No!
and you're self-obsessed
That's
and
not what I'm
self-absorbed.
saying. It's just they're
Fuck
very
you guys.
They're very active players, and they
They-
definitely take charge, and it's just within their personality to do that.
We also did vote them as captain and
Oh,
co-captain.
yikes, I
of
don't
this
wanna talk
entire
about that.
session.
Oh my god, it's almost like democracy in action.
It's a mistake. I agree.
And they just get mad when we're in the office, but they elected me, fucking big, tight, fucking white tennis shorts and all. They elected me.
Cream rises to the crop, to the top, even when it's
But
orange.
as that comes from, we all realize that you both have very leadership personalities. Henceforth, the protagonist in you pops out and is just like, ah, yes, listen to all of the things I have to say and where we're going to go. Ah, we shall go on an adventure. And all of that.
Is that how I sound?
I was just like,
Yes.
which one? Which one is
It's
it?
like a combination of both. I tried to do one, and then I tried to do the other, and it just turned into that.
I don't think I would ever hear that tone come out of Jordan's mouth, even if we paid him.
I tried to be as hands-off as I possibly could. I was trying to delegate shit even when I was running the army. I spent a lot of time building out the units of the army so that each one of you would have couple dozen people at least in your core so that you could go do whatever the fuck you wanted. For me personally, I had my personal guard, and that's all I had to bark orders at. So I was trying to give all you all as much agency as you wanted and tasks to do and whatever. And fuck, man, after I killed myself, I spent 5-6 sessions pretending to be dead, invisible, floating around, just trying to scout out the enemy for you motherfuckers?
The fault of having a protagonist is definitely not on either Jordan or KP's shoulders. That is entirely on mine, especially the second half of the campaign, because really I didn't do anything as far as sub-stories, subplots. It was the main plot going on. I feel like that's the biggest way that I basically let down the group and let down the story, is just not following through on a lot of the subplots that I had started to put hints about in the first half of the campaign.
I would have liked to have seen more from Beth's character and more from Nina Smith's character, with like an honorable mention to Nina Richner's character, although we did get to have your cool moment. But you, Nina Smith, and Beth especially, I feel like have maybe some right to, look at Alkir and be like, oh, big man at the rim. Calling the shots. Sorry.
No, it's nobody's fault. I still had a really good time.
Hold on. It's Alkir's fault.
It's always Alkir's fault.
Let's all be real here for a
Chain of
second.
command,
Like, clearly at the top, it's your fault.
Big man at the rim.
But again, it comes back to my fault because I am the one who gave him the title.
Lord
How
Master.
dare you?
But-
no, you have to take full responsibility for that.
No, it's actually my fault, guys. Like,
Oh, okay.
I'm okay with that.
Let's pin it on me. I decided behind the scenes to pull the strings that got
you're the
Alkir into a
puppet
position of
master.
power. And I told Jordan over here, I'm like, hey, why don't you take a little bit of time off, you know what I'm saying?
It would be within your best interests if you took some time off.
Amazing.
But, you had mentioned the secrets that needed to be revealed, Clayton.
Oh, yeah.
Secrets.
What do we got?
You look so hesitant. You're just like, oh,
Well,
no.
because the biggest one is a secret regarding you.
Oh!
Regarding Ivy.
I feel like
She's pregnant.
Okay, before I...
oh, good God, no.
No.
Have a litter of pups.
That's horrifying.
Pupperfish.
How badly did Ivy really want to get cured?
Oh.
Actually, this is something I was gonna talk about when you mentioned loss of innocence, because in the beginning it was like the biggest thing Ivy wanted. And then somewhere in the middle, like, there was this weird moment where she just became, like, the biggest pessimist and was like, it's never gonna happen. Everything is terrible. You're gonna be a werewolf forever. Welcome to hell. So, pretty badly, I'd actually argue.
So, if there would have been a choice that you could have made to having cured yourself, would you have taken it, like, toward the end of the campaign? You wouldn't have?
No, I
I
like,
did.
my character arc definitely was, like, coming to terms with this, and, like, that was really helpful as a werewolf. I would not have been, no part of my character would have been helpful to this group if she wasn't a werewolf, so I think that was, like, the consensus at the end there.
What about for the aftermath, like, where we did the, like, after campaign, just kind of narrating what was going on?
Okay, what's the secret? You're killing me here. What's the
Who can
secret?
say?
The secret was that there was a way for you to get
I
cured.
thought so.
I did, do a quick, in-game, what if, Solixer came up to you and is like, what if I could cure
Lycanthropy. You'll get there.
Would you want that? And
I
then Ivy
said
said
no.
no.
Okay.
Which is why I essentially didn't go any further with that.
Okay.
What was the cure, though? What was
Well, that's another secret.
it?
This time, the reveal is going to happen to Jordan. The final artifact, the ring.
The ring that she didn't destroy?
The ring that she didn't destroy.
Mm-hmm.
What?
The physical embodiment of the ring didn't get destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
But the magic just supercharged the healing magic in the Celian lands at the Fountain of Healing. So, that is the most powerful magical item in the entire world at this point.
You fool. You damn fool! Do you realize that the Celians are fucking first on the list for fucking Viking Hitler over here? Viking Hitler wants
Viking Stalin.
Actually, to be fair,
Get it right, man. I'm holding two different
Viking
post-World War
Stalin
I
wants a
dictators.
fucking colony in the Celian lands.
he already does. He already put one in at the end of the aftermath.
I thought we fucking blackballed you and said it wouldn't happen.
I said it wouldn't happen.
Clayton was like, we'll see where that goes in a future game.
Yeah.
The council voted against it.
Because I tried to frame it as, well, the orcs have had one there forever, why can I
And
not?
you want a fucking colony there, and guess where the goddamn most powerful fucking magic
Nobody
item is?
knows that though.
They're gonna find out! They're Stalin, man!
It's already deemed as powerful magic. It is just most likely the Viking have never gone inside.
You know,
of
I
it.
probably want to
And it
destroy...
still has its purifying.
Yeah, that.
You are a
hate
seal door.
Sassy.
You're a seal door.
I was gonna say, it's like, insert Lord of the Rings, one ring to rule them all. Nah.
I knew because you're a shit liar.
Yep. I'm just like, yeah, but it's destroyed.
When you came to be like, yeah, I destroyed the ring.
I'm a bad liar. I'm a decent person.
No,
Sorry.
when you came to tell me that you destroyed the ring, I couldn't stop staring at your fish tits. So I was just like, huh, yeah, you did, yeah, okay, great, yeah, cool. We banged.
Yeah.
That's my secret. Now y'all know.
It's not a secret, but...
Oh.
She released all these eggs, and then Akira was
Yeah, it was awesome. We got a thing for eggs.
You can say we got a scramble one. Sorry, I'll go.
No, you're on your
Bye-bye.
shell now. It's good to see.
Did that crack you up?
You guys are
Joke's on you.
That was an excellent one, in my opinion.
We're done. Kill it.
So you cut all of
You
those,
uttered,
right?
by the way, the sentence Viking Stalin and Viking Hitler. Just-
That was the only secret I had.
You know,
'Cause my secret got revealed.
You got
After
mimics.
being called Viking Hitler, you were really ready to take on I'm not Hitler, I'm Viking Stalin.
I don't know. Stalin's just as bad. We're not going to get into this
No,
topic.
we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there. We're going
but-
back to RPG.
Yeah.
Tune in next week. Versus Stalin.
Where me and Katie are just like, okay, was Stalin as bad as Hitler?
We're going to table that discussion.
What
So
other
what's another
secrets?
secret,
Tell us
Clayton?
more secrets.
The last one
It's not
is-
bread riots. I hope.
No, it's that there is still one actual remaining artifact left in the world. Not
God damn it.
the
We're real bad at this.
what had been told was of an artifact being the Well of Eternity. Wasn't actually an
Oh
artifact.
yeah.
It was the water within it that was magical.
We
Oh,
never
that's the
did
ocean.
destroy that.
Well, it's the ocean. You can't destroy the
It's
ocean.
diluted.
It is diluted.
But it's still
but-
the ocean.
It isn't. It is in the sunken Elven College.
What's someone
But-
gonna do? Come bottle it up, put it in a centrifuge, condense it down into a fucking substrate? I don't think so.
I can't wait for the
Clayton,
magical
was there
industrial
any
revolution.
method for us to deal with that?
Individually, no.
Oh.
You had to work together.
Fuck that.
Horrifying.
How?
Like the group?
No, you had to get together a group of mages, and
Oh
who would be
yeah.
powerful enough to do something with it.
Eventually.
Oh, we did what we could
Best I
do.
could think of is befriend a whale, swallow that, and then just like
I could've
shove the
befriended a
whale off
whale.
the edge of the world.
Befriend
No.
anything.
How would you shove a whale off the edge? of the world?
Telekinesis.
Douglas Adams did it.
Those are all them secrets.
As far as I can remember, those are the secrets that either didn't get revealed or didn't get dealt with.
What about personal secrets? Did anybody have any of those malarkey subjects?
I almost went Dark Alkir. I was a hair's thread away from going Dark Alkir.
What would he have looked like?
Alkir.
No,
With a hood.
no. I mean, like, what would those actions have been? I want to know. Tell us about Dark Alkir.
When Jordan and I were talking about the post...
Maybe a light Alkir?
Yeah. Yeah, what? Fuck you! Alkir's a noble birdman!
You were definitely
You make
like
one
Lloyd
joke.
George.
I'm sorry, is that a history reference?
World War One. You were like the leader of Britain in World War One.
Oh.
Mm,
Alright, listen, y'all. After the Vikinger Death Armageddon fleet was defeated, Jordan and I were talking, we were like, man, our characters have reached a point where we got a lot of power, and I don't want to force the group to bend to my will, but I could. I definitely could, but I don't want to do that. So I could just turn my character over to Clayton and roll a new character. Well, I don't really want to do that. I like Alkir. I want to see this through. I could just go Dark Alkir. And Dark Alkir, KD and I were talking about this New World Order idea. You were thinking about your new character, which became Ingwe. We were thinking about New World Order themes, and Dark Alkir would have looked a lot like Cancer Man from the X-Files. Like,
Loses the feathers and everything.
right.
Right.
Smokes a lot of, fantasy cigarettes.
Where were all the fantasy drugs in this game, guys?
No!
Fair point.
They tested them on you to see if they would
I was
cure
thinking-
lycanthropy.
I really basically would have done more aggressive world unification shit and been a lot more kind of whip cracking in my, not in the bedroom, but in my, bring the group together, whether they like it or not, kind of thing. Probably would have had Desdemona's hands cut off for theft.
I left a note, you guys!
Thieved.
I'm also a child.
Okay, the last
No
one was a
better.
joke.
Would you have taken me out once I started going down the path?
Well, I would have basically strung you along like my apprentice, and should you have been powerful enough to usurp me, so be it, but you were
we
not
were just
going to
two
be.
Sith.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, in an alternate universe where I went Dark Alkir.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't. I really like the story arc of Valkyr and his quest to explore and bring the world together in this exploration.
Thank you. I'm really glad I didn't as well. I think it would have been a perversion of a character that I really loved and that I loved playing in this group setting, and I didn't do it, for many good reasons. But in some, minority of alternate universes out there, I went Dark Alkir.
I have a thing. When Ivy was sabotaged and let out of her cage and killed a bunch of people, definitely kind of thought it was, Ingwe.
Had I thought more about this and wanted this to be, okay, actually,
I think
let
this
me
is
rewind.
maybe where the split between Viking Hitler and Viking Stalin happened. You didn't do it,
my
so you're
God.
not Viking Hitler.
Okay, listen, I really, Ingwe had no issues with Ivy besides up to that point. Until you broke out and it was you killed some people and you threatened his security as second in command of the Wit and Tamed, he was well, now she's a problem. But before that, he didn't really care. So I just want to establish that. I had no actual reason to let you out. Now, had this been more like the factions game, I would have been messaging Clayton and being alright, Clayton, I'm opening that cage and I'm gonna frame Desdemona.
Really?
Oh, I don't
Yes.
Assassinate me
offense.
twice.
I
You're
don't think she could have pulled it off. You, however,
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm the shadow play behind. It's like
You
out
could
of
have
the
framed
cage.
her. I am an innocent
believed
child.
you could have
She's so
framed
sweet.
Alkir.
Yeah, easily.
Frame out here.
Be funny.
I don't think
But-
Desdemona's smart enough to figure out how to open the lock.
So regarding that whole the werewolf being let loose from her cage during the full moon, there was one little detail that I didn't get to reveal during the course of the trial that I am going to go ahead and reveal now, and that is the motivation for why that happened.
I would love to hear it.
Coriel was the Nephilim who was the head of that conspiracy to put the idea in your head of the cloak of many forms being something that you could get and have control over whether or not you became a werewolf. Their entire motivation for telling you that was in the hopes that you would go there and get it for yourself.
You tried so hard, and I was just I'm not gonna do it.
And then when you didn't do that, the reason why they did that to you was sheer pettiness.
That's the only
They
true
were evil.
motivation.
Fuckos.
Those two were the only Nephilim who were truly evil. And one of them got a reduced sentence.
Hey,
Because he-
remember when I told y'all I wanted to kill them? I wanted to kill them.
Well, his reduced sentence was to go to an isolated plane where he would be banished from the rest of his kind for the rest of his natural life, which is eternity.
Also very good.
But he is immortal. Chances are somebody's going to come by sooner or later.
I guess. He's going to be real crazy by the time that happens.
Cool, now we have a crazy evil Nephilim on our hands. I don't...
They won't be on our
They could have been dead.
It'd be like that Black Mirror episode where people are stuck in the thing for arbitrarily long.
Well, do we have any other things we wanted to get revealed or questions answered?
Not revealed, but I just think personally it would be really nice to capsulate and go around the table, be like where your character started and where your character ended, and say like if you're happy with, just so like we have it on the podcast, and also so that the players understand. Like we're talking about all these small things, but I think it would give them a better picture of overarching of what happened. Oh no, we don't have to.
No, I like that idea. I just don't want to start.
Oh.
So Kyle can start.
Okay. So Alkir started out as an adventurous lieutenant to a cause that he believed in, but always had larger goals and more, not necessarily personal, but more corporeal, more grounded goals in mind. That being, become the Lord Master and Commander of the Wind Tamed, and then eventually it became a goal to unite the world in a sort of United Nations type situation. That's lowercase u, lowercase n. And by the... Oh, and also starting out, Alkir was, I think, very... a little more of a Riker, not necessarily flirty and fun. But the two best apps.
Yeah, right. I mean, you did sleep with my wife, so...
Yeah, and it was awesome.
Hey, you were not married at the time.
That's a good point. You slept with my girlfriend.
Oh my god, we're like Eskimo buddies.
Okay, so we're gonna just push past that.
All right,
bring it back in.
So I don't.
Who was really Viking Hitler here, Kyle?
There's no Eskimos
The term
left.
Eskimo is an imperialist term, but that's fine.
So anyway, we're bringing it back. It's Alkir.
Yeah, Alkir did a thing.
You were not flirty and fun.
Not flirty and fun, Riker, but the very content being where he was, Riker, who also tried to be the lol human counterpoint to the almost, certainly demigod level of Talon. Issues that couldn't be brought to you because you were busy studying or whatever, could be brought to me. So that was me beginning. And at the end of it, it was very, very fun to become a leader of a city-state / small nation, and a powerful force within a world. I've never had a character in a campaign ever reach that point. And Alkir became that. But he also lost that kind of closer in the trenches connection, I think, to the other players. I tried to always be, fair and keep an open ear, but I also had to fill the void very quickly. Alkir had to mature very quickly after Talon died, for all intents and purposes. By the end of it, there was only a brief faltering that I liked, where... Upon the realization that Talon would be leaving for another plane of existence, Alkir, who had these big dreams and goals in mind, who was always very grounded, suddenly found a weird desire to leave the ground and see what another plane of existence could be like. But I think it was just sort of, what's the term for, right before the wedding jitters?
Pre-wedding jitters?
Yeah.
No, cold feet, I guess.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of cold feet. And in the end, that was a passing fancy.
I think Ivy really started this game. Oh god. She had the fucking, loyal trait, which, I took because, starting this game, y'all were the only family she ever knew. Other than, her Seraphim grandmother, which was interesting. Ivy was just, really, almost, she was very shy, happy-go-lucky, loyal, because Talon saved her, and there was, nothing else she had in the world. Like I mentioned before, there was definitely a loss of innocence throughout all of this, where Ivy realized that these people that, she loved with her whole heart and were her family, were not, really the greatest, not, the an angelic, happy-go-lucky family that she thought they were. Which sounds like something Hayley would say, but it's true. And I don't know, there was definitely, I'm just remembering when we were almost torturing this Viking girl that we found. Oh. And Ivy went through this, weird, rebellious teenager phase where she was like, man, fuck you guys. Fuck you, mom and dad at Talon and Alkir. Mom,
yay!
Dad. Alkir was mom and Talon was dad. But, yeah, it was definitely, she ended the game so much more pessimistic and, I don't know. This is something that I didn't really portray well at the end of the game. She didn't really get much sadder without, like, even wanting to cure lycanthropy or even wanting to stay with you guys like she wanted to in the beginning. So, like, yeah, I got married, but...
I'm not good enough.
That's not what I meant!
That's it.
Oh.
Sadder with me.
I don't know, she's lost her happy-go-lucky worldview of maybe everything will be okay. Like, it's not gonna be okay, it's a shit world.
Reality kind of does that, too.
Yeah, that's sad. Let's bring it back on up with high spirits. Desdemona at the start of the game, innocent, pure being in the world who didn't believe that evil was out there.
Before you continue onward, I want to say that I conceived the entirety of your subplot back in December of last year. This was well before the movie Wonder Woman. I just want to put that out there.
Thanks. I actually have a question about that later, but I want to hear everybody else's stuff.
Warner Brothers.
Happy-go-lucky, naive child in the world who goes out on a quest to try and find who she believes is her father, but she doesn't entirely know what that is, so she literally used to go around to every single perceiving male humanoid person asking, "Are you my dad? Do you want to be my dad? I would really, really like to meet my dad." Are you my dad? Stop. Anyway, watching her go through this journey, traveling with a mercenary company and seeing the horrors of war and humanity and trying to still hold on to her optimism was really, really interesting.
Sitting down for 2 weeks of intensive re-education.
Oh, yeah.
Brainwashing.
Re-education.
You had about brainwashed.
You guys ever just forget that Alkir brainwashed Desdemona? I don't forget that all too often.
Re-education. Re-education.
So like I said, these people that I beloved, not the greatest.
She really had to mature in this world, and while I don't think she ever lost the idea that there are good people, she chooses to always see good people, and I think that's something I think is really interesting towards the end, where she refuses to see all the awful things that Ingwe is doing, because she still holds him in high regards as one of the last remaining things of Magnus to this world, and she truly wants him to be like a brother to her, and she wants to care for him, but he doesn't care about her, which makes me sad. But her endgame, she finally met her dad, and she stood up to him, and I was really, really happy for her. Like, she met him, she listed off all of her titles, all of her accomplishments, and when she asked him if he was her dad, it wasn't a question. It was like a demand. I want to hear it from your mouth that you accept me and you acknowledge me as your child. And in the end, she told him that she didn't need him in her life, and she left. And I was so happy to take that arc of herself growing into herself. But also, turns out I'm a demigod, y'all. My dad is a god. His name is the Storyteller. And something I didn't get to explore when we were talking about the aftermath, which I really do think Desdemona would do, is she wants to see if there's other abandoned children by the gods out there, to try and find her family of all these other abandoned children who might be demigods, and if possible, reclaim their birthright to be better than our parents, to not abandon this world, to make it a better place.
That's unlikely.
For a second, I thought you said...
The reason being, the whole thing was a hallucination. We dosed you.
Yeah, he's right.
Stop.
For half a second, I thought you said dummy god, and I'm just like...
I am a demigod, but I'm also a demigod. And I have a question about that later for you, but I want to hear everybody else's stuff.
I do have one thing I want to say about your character. Mm-hmm. Your character is the only one who had an actual theme song that I had picked for your story. You say that, but here I'm going to tell you what your theme song was.
It's fine.
A Boy Named Sue.
Really?
Yeah.
I have to re-listen to that song then. You know what? I picked Daddy Issues by The Neighborhood.
She-Wolf by Shakira.
Bless.
I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna look up the lyrics to Boy Named Sue real quick. Continue on.
Well, I guess Elixir started off the campaign as a very forward-looking, sex-hungry pacifist who wanted to expand the uses of magic outside of just mage control into more of, physical concepts of it. The same way a light bulb works, but instead it's a concentrated thing of magic inside glass that lights up when you desire it to, and you wouldn't need to be a magic user to make it. But as time went on and Elixir saw the falling out of magic on non-magic users, the fear of what would become of even just regular, not artifact level objects it just was not appealing for Slixer to figure that out. It just would have turned out probably worse for wear, especially once power-hungry humans got their hands on it. And eventually settling down and spreading my
Spreading your what?
Celian DNA throughout different species and learning...
Flippers.
Flip.
Spreading your
I
flippers.
don't have flippers.
She has legs.
Flippers.
Both, in this case. And slowly recreating my... What's it called? Give it to me.
Own personal gene pool?
Yes, there's something... There's like... it's like similar to a legend, but not a legend. Never mind.
Legacy?
Legacy. My legacy! Thank you. The word I'm looking for. My legacy throughout the world. And trying to see whom I could pair with to create a legacy, and they would survive and be the strongest of beings, and then have them do the thing that I couldn't do once the humans were a little more situated.
It's like eugenics.
In a way.
So if we play this again, can we all play, like, the mutant half-breed children?
That is an idea that I would very much like to entertain.
At some point, I guess a lot of...
For all Solixer's kids. Jesus.
Hey, what up? I'm your mom! But a lot of, I guess, the little eggs that I planted throughout the world, some of them were destroyed, especially in human lands, due to...
No,
they were missing.
Yeah.
They were missing. They were...
Children.
Oh, Kevin Costner's running around out there.
They were not in the place that I left them, and there was no remains-ish left over.
There were some artifacts.
There were artifacts. I'm trying to remember everything. And it concerned me, but not enough to go out and look. If they survive, they survive, and I have missing data. I can always fill in those spots later. If they survive and do horrible things, then good for them.
So you had a bunch of latchkey kids.
Yeah, basically. No one knows, at least I don't know where they went. The only one who knows is our dear God here.
Hey there, guy. It's me, Alk here.
But I think in the end, Solixer has a lot less hope for the world, but has a lot more hope for her own legacy than anything else. And not much else other than that. And
sad married couple.
Yeah. Protect the city of Fontaine with what little power she has to do so. But more power than most of the Celians there. And we'll keep that one secret with Gath to most likely her grave. And maybe a trusted other or two.
Don't tell Alk here.
I won't tell Alk here.
Good.
Just in case my dear lovely werewolf wife eventually grows tired of at like 80 having to go out in the middle of nowhere and throw a tantrum for a day or so every month. Just in case,
Oh god, imagine traveling with like an 80-year-old just grandma, but a werewolf, like, I need my traveling blanket and handcuffs.
I like to think that an 80-year-old werewolf is just like real, like they don't go on rampage anymore, they're just like real tired.
She's laying in
Some
bed.
achy joints.
Yeah, Ivy is laying in bed, and one of Solixer's kids comes up and says, "Why, Grandma? What big eyes you have?"
I love that idea. I'm here for it. Oh, don't eat my children.
I'll try.
It's like some...
They may look like
mythology
caviar
level
to
shit.
you, but...
Just gonna swallow that Zeus, baby.
That's about it, though. I'm at least content with where my character ended up, and the fun little plot holes that my children left.
Yeah, I'm leaving a lot of things like that. I'm intentionally leaving open as like seeds for the next campaign.
Wonk.
From a personal power level, like character perspective, I feel like I started the game playing about a 16th level D&D character, and I ended the game playing about a 19th level D&D character. So I didn't feel like there was very much progress in numbers or anything on my sheet, which got kind of boring for me. As far as like personal stuff, when I started out, I had like strict Jedi code kind of magic paladin sort of persona. There's the fucking war dragged on and the goddamn Tomb of Horrors especially. And all that fucking shit. I just got a lot more aloof. I was like kind of phoning it in towards the end, trying to, like, help you guys out. I was in a weird spot a lot of the way through this because I kept knowing that I had the power to get something done really, really fucking quickly. But then everybody else would just be standing around. And so I kept having to be like, no, let them do stuff. Let them develop. Do their thing. Blah, blah, blah. And so in doing that, stepping back and not giving a shit, especially after, like, dying and fucking, like, going through the afterlife however many times, the level of aloofness that I imagine a character like that being in is, like, hardly there on the plane. So I imagine this character probably took off to wander the multiverse, and in the eons long existence of his life, you guys will probably be a blip that was forgotten.
Awesome.
So you're, well, a couple points. One, I would like to point out that, like, your describing your character's mental progress throughout the campaign is very much like the type of thing that you read about in like Anne Rice's vampire novels, or like where immortal characters just kind of lose touch with reality, and that you are the opposite end of you're the opposite side of the coin for the main villain of the campaign, Acererak, because that's how he got to exactly where he is. Or where he was at the end of the campaign. Mm-hmm. He had already gone off, ventured in the multiverse, and was, like, just going out and experiencing things. And that exactly is where your character ended the campaign, is going off basically in his footsteps.
Oh.
Possibly.
Now, will you become the next
What
one?
if he is a Sarak?
Is that a one-lane road, I wonder?
Jordan, there's no way you can possibly circumvent what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're
Infinite
on the path,
universe,
man.
infinite possibilities, it's all illusions.
It's all illusions.
It just leads back to
It's like Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah.
None of it actually matters.
There's IDIC. I think that the one distinction there is that Acererak did not discover Sigil, the hub world. I think you will, and therefore you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll end up as some Berg on Sigil, and you'll learn your place.
So, Warhammer 40K, right?
Planescape.
Planescape. Yeah.
So, Jordan, the other thing I wanted to say was your statement about, like, you felt like you started about level 16 and you ended around level 19. So, I said that we started the campaign on December 1st. The sheet that I gave you all for character creation, concepts, and stuff, at the very bottom, I wrote, character creation note. At the end of character creation, your character should either match or be very near to your character concept. Savage Worlds has a much less power curve than level-based systems such as Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. Starting characters are already assumed to be very competent individuals when compared with the vast majority of NPCs. Character growth happens more through the story than through stats.
Mm. There's still that levels thing, though, like seasoned, and I can't remember all of them, and legendary, and I didn't feel like it mattered very much. It probably did for other players, but starting with magic, it's like so head and shoulders above whatever else is going on that you can hardly compare like a great cleave to infinite teleport as far as like what your character's capable of.
All right, KD, finish us off here.
Well, I'm sort of in the unique position here of having played two characters. And that we're very different from each other, so it's very hard for me to, like, be like, oh, they mirrored each other or something, because I feel like didn't really happen. But Magnus started off very, kind of the whole stereotype of, like, gruff warrior guy, but, like, cares about his friends. And he sort of carried through, I like to think, most of the campaign that way up until, like, the Vikinger arc, where he started to undergo some changes and, like, kind of come to terms with his own mortality, and he got this sort of guilt complex over realizing this idea of, like, oh, my entire race of people is doing this terrible thing, and I can't, like, I can stop it, but to do so, I'm gonna lose part of myself in the process. And so he became a little bit more reserved and kind of, knowing what he had to do. And so he sort of ended the campaign that way, where he his arc finished. He stopped the invasion, and even if he had lived, I don't think he would have still been the same. He ended up killing both his parents to do so, because they were the leaders. Ingwe, on the other hand, started off, like I've kind of mentioned already, charming, sarcastic sort of deal because I didn't know what I wanted to do with him. And so, but then once I got a better handle on how I wanted to play the character, Ingwe was, trying to follow in Magnus's footsteps. He was trying to be heroic. He was trying to care about people. Like, he tried to care for Desdemona a little bit, but he just slid back into what he was before without Magnus's influence, and he ended, I love the way he ended the game, as this power player, this iron-willed leader, but I will say this, in combats, as I know Jordan mentioned a little bit, in combat, Magnus and Ingwe were pretty identical, and I didn't necessarily have an issue with that because I loved the way that Berserker combat worked in this game. So, I was okay with them not standing out too much in combat, but I really did want to distinguish the two characters in RP, and I think that worked out pretty well.
Any other items before we end?
I do have a question for you, because you had said that you had planned Desdemona's arc from the beginning. Why did you decide to make her father a god? Because to me, that seems like you literally, like at the end, we're all humans or of different races. Desdemona's a literal demigod.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Thought it would make a cool story.
It did, but why? Because it's also Beth's god. It wasn't just like any other god. Like, it was like specifically the storyteller. I don't know. I don't know. I think about it a lot.
Well, it was the only deity that would have.
Makes sense.
When a man spends all his life reading books, every now and again he just wants to fuck a human.
Would you rather
Don't even fuck a
been,
nymph, a high priestess.
would you have rather been the daughter of your party pony?
No. Well, if I was a satyr, then yes. Oh my god. My one
Alright, what do you guys say we quit this bullshit and raggle some dice?
Satyrs are half goats.
This has been a production of Alien Familiar Media. You can find past episodes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. This production is protected under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution, no derivatives license. Music for this episode is Suburban Outlaw by Forget the Whale and can be found at freemusicarchive.org. Bye.